Hello. As I've got older, I realised that values have probably been important to me for most of my life, both in my personal life and in my work life in developing organisations. When I was younger, it was always the same when it came to school reports. Suzanne is quiet and should speak up more in class, but that's really difficult when you're shy and all you want to do is sort of blend into the background. Who'd have thought I'd be stood here today? And then one day I did speak up. I spoke up not in class, but in the playground. And I spoke up just at that point when Graham Brown was about to trample bright yellow hair ribbons into a big muddy pool. Stop! What do you think you're doing? I think I was as shocked as Graham was. But it had quite an effect. Graham backed down and Annette Jones stopped crying. And that afternoon I went back into the classroom with a feeling of pride that actually I'd spoken up about something that I thought was unkind, and it had such a positive impact. How then, some 30 years later, another experience around values would have quite a different impact on me. I was in a new role in a new NHS Foundation Trust, which was at the time, like many NHS Foundation Trusts, quite hierarchical, quite focused on performance and efficiency, but not really about people. I'd undertaken a review into the effectiveness of the organisation, and on the back of that had been invited to develop some organisational values. So I set off to engage with people to really understand what values people would think were important for this organisation. I soon found out that people had a breadth of values that were personal to them, and they all wanted them to be represented in the organisation. So it was obvious we weren't going to do this job by consensus. So I changed tack. I looked at the report that I'd written and where the gaps were, and I looked at national evidence like the Berwick report that had recently been published. And I developed what I thought were 5 really credible values that would make a difference to the organisation. So there, in a room of 60 quite senior clinical leaders and managers, I presented the values alongside the brand new chief executive. It was explosive. It was explosive in all the wrong ways. I had lit that blue touch paper that were people's personal values. And how could I possibly not represent them? So faces started to redden, arms started to fly, and voices were certainly raised. It was wounding. But I said nothing. I wanted to say, look, senior managers, look how you're behaving. This is exactly the reason we need organisational values and behaviours. But I didn't. I blended into the background and quietly sat down. I was shocked. I was shocked by their behaviour, and I was shocked at mine, that I had said nothing. And reflecting back on it, I think that moment had more of an impact on me in my life than that time when I had spoken up in the classroom. A few days later, I did approach some individuals who were quite vociferous on the day, just to tell them how they'd made me feel. All of them were apologetic, and none of them had actually thought how they had made me feel on that day. Values and behaviours are really important, but some people think that they're quite soft or quite fluffy, but they have a very hard edge to them. Roger Klein, research fellow at Middlesex University, and his colleagues have calculated that the cost of bullying in the NHS is about £2.3 billion a year. Dr. Chris Turner from the Civility Saves Lives campaign has shown that if I'm unkind to you, your cognitive ability will be affected by up to 61%. And if we witness people being unkind to each other, we're 50% less likely to step up and offer help in the future. Frightening statistics. statistics that really will have an impact on patient care. So values are important, and that's why as an organisation we did go on to develop some new organisational values with the help of an external partner who'd had experience of developing values both inside and outside the NHS. She spoke to us not about values, but about what's important to us in delivering good care and creating happier and healthier communities. She asked us, what are those discriminating truths about Cumbria, and what makes you so unique? Cumbria is a beautiful place. It's a big rural county with sparse areas of population and real pockets of deprivation. It's a place where you can live 17 years longer in one part of the county than the other. But Cumbria is more than lakes and mountains. Cumbrian people have a real spirit that brings them together. When we see that in adversity such as the floods in 2005 and then again in 2009 and 2015. We are our communities, and if you're working in a community hospital, you can expect to be treating your neighbour, your teacher, your relative. So it's from these discriminating truths that our values emerged. And when we shared them with staff, even though they couldn't see their own personal values in there, they really resonated. So we started to make them visible. We built them into our processes like recruitment, induction, and appraisal, and people started to talk about them. Staff engagement rose from below average to above average, and at one point the trust was the second most improving trust in the country in the NHS staff survey. Now, some years on, the world has turned, and we're working together as organisations that have different values, different mindsets, and actually different cultures, and it can be tricky. But what if we had values that we shared? How might that make a difference to working together for better outcomes for patients? So that's exactly what we did. We built on the same discriminating truths to unpick our organisational values and build new ones. We're making them visible. We're building them into appraisal, recruitment processes, and we're starting to talk about them. But there's a long way to go. A few months ago, I was working with 3 different groups of leaders, and I asked them, how well are we living our values? All of them were in agreement. We've a long way to go. And strangely, a lot of them said, oh, but it's not me, it's not my team. The reality is, it's all of us. What I say, and more importantly how I say it, will have an impact. An impact on how people feel, on how they think, and then the stories that they will start to tell. It starts with me, because the conversations that I have really do shape the culture. So, and what about you? If civility really does save lives, what will you do the next time you see someone like me being unkind? Will you speak up? And what will be the impact if you don't? Thank you for listening.